Barbados implementation mechanism and say, oh, yeah, well, it's giving money very soon. Right now, it's actually making an announcement, and you could go and get your 5 to 20 million, and they're spending half the money that they got pledged. But if we look back more into what is the law and what are we talking about what is loss and damage. Loss and damage is, to me, an economic issue, an illicit issue. It's about international wrongful act. It's about the negative externalities of carbon-intensive economies. It's about the lack of responsibility for not being responsible for the climate debt that some economies have. And it also has a lot to do with why the UNFCCC is going up 0.5, that is not the bottom goal, it's the legal limit according to the court, to the ICJ and to the Inter-American Court. So if that's real, then we have to think back on what are we seeing here and what we have now. And I think with the advisory opinions, we have a very different landscape. It is not enough to talk about the Barbados implementation mechanism. It is not enough to talk about what the WIM has been for so many years. It is what is the legal obligation of countries as the minimum, as the platform or legal basis for making climate governance decisions. And what climate governance decisions for loss and damage do not meet that threshold. And I think there's many. For example, while we have the loss and damage fund, we know because the Secretary General report said it a long time ago that the money allocated for it, it doesn't even cover a fraction of what is needed yearly, because even though it was given money like 2 years ago, it has not been replenished. It hasn't even been, the pledges that have been given, half of them have not been allocated to the fund. The fund has been developed into this implementation mechanism in a way that is not opening for communities to access directly. And most importantly, does not conform with its structure as the courts, the Inter-American courts has also recognized. It's not built to protect human rights, and it's not built to fulfill international law obligations regarding loss and damage. So if we know that, maybe we should go back to where loss and damage discussions began, which usually it's in Article 4.8 of the UNFCCC, of how can we now, knowing what are our legal responsibilities, knowing that after 30 years emissions have not been stabilized, knowing that we have trillions of dollars of loss and damage because our economies have not internalized the negative externalities and have made profit of damaging the climate system, maybe we should then develop what many countries, especially from the Pacific, said in the beginning. We need mechanisms for reparations, for responsibility, obligation-based mechanisms, because now that we have the VIM, we don't know if in 2027 we'll even have, again, a fraction of the funding that is needed. So does that ensure the rule of law? It does not. Does it enable our economies to be structurally transformed in taking account the negative externalities of destroying people and planet? It does not. So now we have the opportunity in this COP to check what the ICJ said, to check what the Inter-American Court of Human Rights said, to check what the African Court will say eventually in the consultative opinion, and to make transformational changes in our governance. Because if not, I probably won't see you, but somebody will be here 30 years from now when we're at 4 to 6 degrees saying that, well, we still have not decreased emissions because the negative externalities have never budgeted into the economy. And this is what loss and damage reparation does. Closes a loop of consumption and production. The loss and damage fund and all the mechanisms that are not obligation-based, that do not conform to international law and human rights law, do not close that loop. They make an economy based on unlimited resources, which we do not have. And as a Central American that works with communities doing research, I know that it is their right not to be harmed. It is their right for harm to be ceased. It is their right for restitution to happen. It is their right for compensation. And those are international obligations, and those are human rights. And that is the future for loss and damage, despite whatever all the climate nerds say and whatever party-driven processes. Now we're not just asking, we're demanding our rights and their legal obligations to negotiate under legal obligations in the UNFCCC. Thank you.
You can just. Thank you very much, Adrian, for giving us such a bigger picture and also connecting the loss and damage conversation.
It's okay? Yeah. So there's this testimony about a colleague from Honduras. And he said when the flood came, his house got destroyed. So he went with his wife to a shelter. And then everybody went back to their houses, but he had no house. And then he felt bad. So he went and built a little refuge with some branches. And then he promised himself that he will build a stronger house. And he did. So what does that tell us? It's not that there isn't loss and damage money, because that guy and his family paid the loss and damage, the cost of the economic development of big carbon economies. So that's where the money is. It is subsidized by those people. So it's not there isn't money. It's that people here, the negotiators, want to make profit about everything. And that's why the TFFF that the president is issuing now has $5-6 billion. Instead, the loss and damage has less than what it was placed, $780 million. So it's not that there is no money. It's that the poor pay for loss and damage and the wealthy make profit of about everything else. Thank you.